The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was the largest meeting place in the known galaxy. It floated in the darkness of space, a massive station built by ancient hands long forgotten. Every year, representatives from 47 spacefaring civilizations came here to talk, to argue, and to decide the fate of worlds. Daniel Hayes walked through the entrance with his small team behind him. He was a man in his 50s, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that never seemed to hurry. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing fancy, nothing impressive. Behind him came Amy Porter, a young woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. Nathan Cole walked beside her, a big man with broad shoulders who moved like someone who knew how to fight, but preferred not to. Claire Bennett carried a tablet and smiled politely at everyone they passed. Dr. Benjamin Shaw completed the group, an older scientist who seemed more interested in studying the aliens than impressing them. The humans found their seats in the far corner of the hall. Their chairs were the smallest. Their table was the furthest from the center. This was how new species were treated. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. In galactic terms, they were babies taking their first steps. The Vicari delegation entered next, and the whole room seemed to notice. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with 4 arms and scales that shimmered like metal. Their leader, High Commander Zorvax, walked like he owned the station. His yellow eyes swept across the room until they landed on the humans. He laughed. It was a harsh sound, like stones grinding together. "Look at them," Zorvax said to his officers, making no effort to lower his voice. "The soft ones from the wet little planet. They sit there like frightened children at an adult gathering." His officers laughed with him. Several other delegations joined in. The Krath, insect-like beings with clicking mandibles, made sounds of amusement. The gas-dwelling Umari pulsed with colors that meant mockery in their language. Amy Porter kept her face perfectly still. She had heard worse things in her life. Beside her, Nathan Cole simply shrugged, as if the giant reptilian warlord was nothing more than a barking dog. "They breathed like vermin," Zorvax continued, louder now, enjoying the attention. "Millions of them crowded on the one planet, fighting over scraps. And now they think they deserve a seat among the stars." Daniel Hayes took out a small notebook and began writing something. He did not look up. He did not react. He simply wrote, as calm as a man sitting in his own living room. This made Zorvax angrier. He wanted fear. He wanted the humans to tremble. Their silence insulted him. At the center of the hall, a crystalline being rose from its seat. This was the Witness, eldest of the Tellurians, a species that had existed when most other civilizations were still learning to use fire. The Witness had lived for 6,000 years and had seen empires rise and fall, like waves on a shore. The Witness watched the humans with curiosity. Something about their silence was different. It was not the silence of fear. It was not the silence of weakness. It was the silence of patience. The opening ceremonies began. One by one, each delegation stood to introduce themselves and their achievements. The Vicari boasted of their military conquests, listing the 6 civilizations they had absorbed in the past century. The Krath spoke of their vast trading networks, carefully avoiding mention of the slave trade that funded them. The Umara described their ancient culture and their mastery of energy manipulation. When humanity's turn came, Daniel Hayes stood slowly. The room grew quiet, but not from respect. They simply wanted to see what the weak little humans would say. "Thank you for allowing us to attend," Hayes said. His voice was soft but clear. "Earth sends its greetings to all assembled here. We are a young species, still learning the ways of the galaxy. We come hoping to find friendship and cooperation. We have no demands. We make no threats. We simply wish to live in peace with our neighbors." He sat down. That was it. No boasting. No displays of power. No lists of achievements. The laughter that followed was the loudest of the day. Zorvax slapped his four hands together in mocking applause. "Beautiful," he said. "The vermin wish to live in peace." "How touching. How pathetic." Claire Bennett continued smiling pleasantly. Dr. Shaw made notes on his tablet. Amy Porter examined her fingernails, as if the mockery was simply boring to her. The witness noticed something else. A look passed between the humans. It was quick, barely visible, but it was there. A look of shared understanding. A look that said they knew something the rest of the room did not. As the ceremonies continued, other species took turns insulting the humans. The Synthera, a race of androids, calculated that humans were the weakest biological species ever admitted to the assembly. They shared this calculation publicly, as if it was simply interesting data. The tall, thin Moravians clicked their tongues in sounds that translated roughly to amusing little creatures. Through it all, the humans remained silent. They took notes. They observed. They listened. When the first day ended, the delegations returned to their quarters. The Vrikari threw a party to celebrate their dominance. Other species gathered in small groups to discuss politics and trade. No one invited the humans to anything in their small, simple quarters. The human delegation sat together around a plain table. "Well," Annie Porter said, finally allowing herself a small smile, "they certainly don't like us." Nathan Cole cracked his knuckles. "The big lizard talks too much. His kind always does." "The witness was watching us closely," Claire Bennett observed. "The Tellurians are ancient and wise. They may suspect something." Dr. Shaw looked up from his tablet. "I've completed my analysis. The Vrikari military is exactly what our intelligence suggested. Powerful, but predictable. Their technology has not advanced in 200 years. They rely on intimidation rather than innovation." Daniel Hayes leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was something different in his gaze. Something harder. "They showed us exactly who they are today," he said quietly. "Bullies, conquerors. They see kindness as weakness and silence as fear. They have no idea what they're looking at." "When do we tell them?" Amy asked. Hayes shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Let them keep laughing. Let them keep underestimating us. When the time comes, they will understand that silence is not weakness." He pulled out a small communication device and typed a brief message. Far away, beyond the range of any sensor on the station, something received that message. Something vast. Something patient. Something that had been waiting for 30 years. The humans of Earth had learned many lessons in their violent history. They had learned that the universe was cruel to the weak. They had learned that trust must be earned, not given. And they had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the greatest strength is knowing when to stay silent. 3 days passed at the summit. 3 days of meetings and arguments and political games. 3 days of the humans sitting quietly in their corner, taking notes, watching everything. On the morning of the 4th day, High Commander Zorvax stood before the entire assembly with fire in his yellow eyes. His scales seemed to glow with excitement. His forearms spread wide as he addressed the gathered species. "Fellow members of the assembly," he announced, his voice booming across the Great Hall, "the Vrikari Empire hereby claims the star systems designated as Outer Rim Sectors 7 through 12. These systems contain valuable resources that rightfully belong to the strong." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not unusual. The Vrikari had done this many times before. They would claim territory, and whoever lived there would either submit or be destroyed. But then Zorvax smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. These sectors currently contain 3 systems claimed by the human civilization. All eyes turned to the human delegation. Daniel Hayes looked up from his notes with mild interest. As if someone had mentioned the weather, The humans have no means to defend these territories, Zorvax continued, clearly enjoying himself. We offer them a choice. Abandon your colonies within one standard rotation, one of your Earth weeks, and we will allow your species to continue existing. Refuse, and we will demonstrate to the entire galaxy what happens to the weak. The chamber was silent. This was how things worked. The strong took from the weak. No one interfered. No one ever interfered. Amy Porter leaned close to Nathan Cole. He's talking about 17 million people, she whispered. Families, children, entire cities. Cole nodded grimly. His hands had curled into fists under the table. Zorvax spread his arms wider. We have 140 warships in that sector. The humans have, what, a dozen small patrol vessels? He laughed. This is not a battle. This is pest control. Several delegations laughed along with him. The craft clicked their mandibles in approval. Even some of the more neutral species nodded. This was simply natural order. The strong survived. The weak did not. Daniel Hayes rose slowly from his chair. The laughter faded. Everyone wanted to see this. They wanted to watch the human leader beg for mercy. They wanted to see tears, fear, desperation. Commander Zorvax, Hayes said, his voice as calm and steady as it had been on the first day. Thank you for informing us of your intentions. I appreciate the courtesy. Zorvax preened at what he thought was submission. However, Hayes continued, I must respectfully decline your offer. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Zorvax blinked his yellow eyes. Decline? The systems you mention contain 17 million human civilians, Hayes said. They are not negotiable. They will not be abandoned. They will not be surrendered. For a moment, Zorvax seemed unable to process what he was hearing. Then his face twisted with cruel amusement. You decline? You, with your tiny ships and your soft bodies? You decline the Vakari Empire? Yes. Then your people will die screaming. Zorvax stepped forward, his massive form towering over the human delegation, even from across the room. We will burn your colonies to ash. We will hunt your ships through the darkness. And when we are finished, we will come to your precious Earth and show your entire species the price of defiance. Dr. Benjamin Shaw began typing rapidly on his tablet. His old fingers moved with surprising speed. Claire Bennett's smile had not changed, but her eyes had grown cold. Nathan Cole was perfectly still, the way a predator is still before it strikes. Hayes remained standing, unmoved by the threats. Commander, I would like to propose a brief recess. 24 hours. To consider your generous offer. This confused Zorvax. He had expected immediate surrender or foolish defiance. This calm request did not fit either pattern. 24 hours? He repeated, Yes, surely the mighty Vakari Empire can spare a single day. Zorvax considered this. A day of watching the humans suffer in fear would be entertaining. Very well. Take your time, little human. Savor your last moments of hope. Tomorrow you will kneel before me, or you will die. The session ended. Delegations filed out of the chamber, many of them casting pitying looks at the humans. Some looked away in shame. They knew what was coming, and they knew they would do nothing to stop it. The witness remained seated, watching the humans leave. There was something strange happening here. The witness had seen countless species face the Vakari threat. All of them had shown fear. All of them had trembled. The humans were not trembling. In their quarters, the human delegation moved with quiet efficiency. Claire Bennett had activated a secure communication system, one that used technology no other species in the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Shaw completed his calculations and handed them to Hayes. The Vakari fleet positions are exactly where we predicted, Shaw reported. Their flagship is the Devastator, stationed at the edge of our territory. Commander Zorvax will likely observe the attack from there. Are people in those colonies? Hayes asked. Already evacuating to secure shelters, Amy Porter reported. Emergency protocols have been active since we arrived at this summit. We knew something like this would happen. Hayes nodded. He took a deep breath and looked at each member of his team. 30 years, he said quietly. For 30 years, we have pretended to be weak. We have accepted insults. We have hidden our true strength. All of it leading to this moment. Do you think they're ready for what's coming? Nathan Cole asked. There was no pleasure in his voice. What was about to happen would change everything. No, Hayes replied. They have no idea. That's rather the point. He turned to Claire Bennett. Send the message. Tell the Council of Admirals that the Vrekari have declared war on humanity. Tell them it's time. Claire's fingers flew across the console. The message was brief, just a few words, but it traveled faster than light through quantum-entangled channels that no scanner could detect. In less than a heartbeat, it reached Earth. The response came almost immediately. 4 words on the screen. Understood. Initiating Protocol Prometheus. Hayes read the words and allowed himself a small smile. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow the galaxy will learn what has been standing behind us all this time. Amy Porter moved to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity's true fleet was already moving. Ships that no one in the galaxy knew existed. Ships that had been built in secret, hidden in the darkness between stars. All those years of being laughed at, she said softly. All those insults and jokes. Was it worth it? Hayes joined her at the window. We needed to know who would help us and who would try to destroy us. Now we know. The Vrekari showed us their true nature. So did everyone who laughed along with them. And the ones who didn't laugh? Hayes thought of the witness, sitting silently in the hall. He thought of a few other delegations who had looked uncomfortable during the mockery. Those are the ones we'll protect, he said. Those are the ones who deserve allies. Outside the window, space was dark and empty, but not for much longer. The next morning, the great hall of Nexus Prime was filled with anticipation. Word had spread through the station that the humans would either surrender or be destroyed. Either way, it would be entertaining. The Vrekari delegation arrived first, dressed in their finest military decorations. High Commander Zorvax wore a cape made from the skins of enemies he had personally killed. His officers carried ceremonial blades. They expected to accept a surrender today. Other delegations filled their seats. The craft brought recording devices to capture the humiliation. The Umari pulsed with colors of amusement. Even the usually neutral Synthera seemed interested in witnessing the end of humanity's brief time among the stars. The human seats remained empty. Zorvax stood at the center of the hall, his scales shimmering with pride. It seems our guests have decided to hide, he announced. Perhaps they have already fled back to their little planet. Perhaps they are wise enough to know that an alarm cut through his words. It was the station's proximity alert, a sound that had not been heard in centuries. Something was approaching. Something large. Through the massive observation windows that lined one wall of the great hall, the stars began to disappear. No, not disappear. Something was blocking them. Something enormous was moving between the station and the distant points of light. Then it emerged from hyperspace, and the chamber fell into absolute silence. It was a ship. But calling it a ship was like calling an ocean a puddle. It was so vast that the station's sensors could not determine where it ended. Its surface was dark as night, angular and sharp, covered in structures that could only be weapons. Each weapon platform was larger than the biggest Vrekari dreadnought. Then another ship appeared, and another, and another. 7 of these impossible vessels formed a silent semicircle around Nexus Prime. They did not hail the station. They did not make threats. They simply waited, like mountains that had decided to visit. The Valkyrie fleet that had been stationed nearby to intimidate the other delegations suddenly looked like toys. Their mighty warships were specks of dust compared to what had just arrived. Zorvax's scales had gone pale. His forearms hung limply at his sides. "What?" he whispered. "What is this?" The door to the Great Hall opened, and the human delegation walked in. Daniel Hayes led the way, moving with the same calm, unhurried pace he always had. Amy Porter, Nathan Cole, Claire Bennett, and Dr. Benjamin Shaw followed behind him. They walked to their corner seats and sat down as if nothing unusual was happening. "What is the meaning of this?" Zorvax demanded, his voice cracking. "What have you done?" Hayes looked up with an expression of mild confusion. "Oh, I apologize for the commotion. Our escort arrived a bit early." "Escort?" The word came from the witness, who had risen from their crystalline seat for the first time in centuries. "Ambassador Hayes, what are those vessels?" Hayes folded his hands on the table. "Those are Guardian-class capital ships. We call them Guardians for short. Each one carries a crew of approximately 8,000 humans. Each one has enough firepower to destroy everything in a solar system. There are 7 here today. The chamber remained frozen. We currently have 47 Guardians in active service," Hayes continued, his voice still calm and pleasant. "Another 20 are under construction. We also have several thousand smaller support vessels, defense platforms, and specialized combat units." Amy Porter stood and walked to a display screen. With a few touches, she brought up images and data. When humanity first discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago, we also discovered something else. We discovered that we were not alone in the universe. She changed the display to show historical records. We watched other species. We listened to their communications. We studied their wars, their politics, their methods. And we learned a very important lesson. "What lesson?" The witness asked. Nathan Cole spoke for the first time, his deep voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We learned that the galaxy is not kind to the weak. We learned that other species would see our small population and our single planet and think we were easy prey. We learned that if we revealed our true capabilities, we would become a target for everyone who feared what we might become. So we hid," Dr. Shaw explained. "We built our fleet in secret, in hidden shipyards between the stars. We developed technologies that no one else has seen. We prepared for the day when someone would threaten us. And we waited," Claire Bennett added. "We waited to see who would show us kindness and who would try to destroy us. We accepted the insults. We endured the mockery, because we needed to know." Hayes rose from his seat and looked directly at Zorvax. "Commander, you have shown us exactly what the Valkyrie Empire truly is. You threatened to murder 17 million innocent civilians. You promised to hunt our ships and burn our worlds. You did this because you believed we were weak." He took a step forward. "We are not weak." Zorvax stumbled backward, nearly falling. "You cannot do this. The other species will never allow." "Allow?" Hayes interrupted, and for the first time, there was steel in his voice. "Commander, I don't think you understand what is happening here. We are not asking for permission. We are not negotiating. We are telling you how things will be." Outside the windows, the 7 Guardian ships rotated slowly. Thousands of weapon ports became visible, each one glowing with barely contained energy. They were all pointed at the Valkyrie fleet. "Here is what will happen now," Hayes said. "You will withdraw your forces from human space. You will issue a formal apology to this assembly for your threats against our people. You will sign a non-aggression treaty that you will honor for the rest of your civilization's existence. "And if I refuse?" Zorvax asked, though his voice was barely a whisper. Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Commander, you already declared war on humanity. You announced your intention to destroy our colonies. Everything that happens from this moment forward is a response to your aggression. If you refuse these terms, we will respond accordingly. You would not attack first. We would not need to." Hayes glanced at Dr. Shaw. The scientist pulled up more data on the display. "We have spent 20 years studying Ricari shield technology. We know every frequency, every weakness, every flaw. Your fleet could not withstand a single volley from one Guardian. 7 of them could end this in seconds." The silence stretched on and on. Finally, something broke inside Zorvax. His proud shoulders slumped. His fierce eyes dropped to the floor. The mighty conqueror who had terrified dozens of species suddenly looked very small. "What do you want?" he asked. "I told you," Hayes said, returning to his seat. "Withdraw and apologize. Then we can move forward as civilized beings. The choice is yours." Every eye in the chamber was on Zorvax. Every species that had ever feared the Ricari watched as their tormentor faced a power greater than his own. Zorvax looked at his officers. They had no advice to give. He looked at the other delegations. None of them would meet his eyes. He looked out the window at the massive ships that hung in space like patient gods. "I will withdraw," he said quietly. "I will apologize." Hayes nodded once. "Thank you, Commander. That is a wise decision." And just like that, the galaxy changed forever. The hours that followed, Zorvax's surrender reshaped the galaxy faster than any war ever could. "High Commander." Zorvax stood before the entire assembly and delivered his apology. His voice was flat, his eyes empty. He spoke the words that Daniel Hayes had provided, admitting that the Ricari had been wrong to threaten humanity. He promised to withdraw all forces from contested space. He pledged that his empire would honor a new era of peace. When he finished, he walked out of the chamber without looking at anyone. Within a week, his own government would remove him from power. The shame was too great. A new generation of Ricari leaders would begin the long process of changing their society, learning that strength could mean more than conquest. But the humans were not finished with their reckoning. Daniel Hayes requested a private session with the Assembly's ruling council. The meeting lasted 4 hours. No one ever revealed exactly what was said in that room, but when the council members emerged, several powerful species found their positions greatly diminished. The Krath delegation received the first blow. Amy Porter presented evidence that humanity had been gathering for decades. Records of slave ships, documents showing the roots and methods of their cruel trade, names of victims from a dozen different species. "We know everything," Porter told the Krath representative, a clicking insectoid whose confidence had already begun to crumble. "We know where your holding facilities are. We know which officials profit from this suffering. We know the names of every species you have victimized. What will you do with this information?" The Krath asked. "We will share it with every species whose people you have enslaved. They will decide what justice looks like." The Krath delegation left the station that same day. They did not return. The Umari were next. They had been quietly siphoning resources from smaller civilizations for centuries, using their advanced technology to steal energy and minerals without detection. Or so they thought. Nathan Cole personally delivered the message to their delegation. "One of our Guardian ships will be visiting your home system tomorrow. Consider it a diplomatic gesture, a reminder that we are watching." The Umari, beings of living gas who had never feared any solid species, suddenly discovered what fear felt like. The siphoning stopped immediately. Other species received similar visits. The Moravians, who had been planning to expand their territory into weaker neighbors' space, quietly canceled those plans. The Synthera, who had calculated the humans as weak, began recalculating everything they thought they knew. But not all of humanity's actions were punishment throughout the summit. Several smaller species had watched the mockery of humanity without participating. Some had even looked uncomfortable. The Tellurians under the witness had remained silent and observant. A handful of other delegations had simply minded their own business. These species received different visits. Ambassador Hayes personally met with representatives from the Kovani, a peaceful species of artists and thinkers who had spent centuries being bullied by stronger neighbors. He offered them something they had never been offered before. "Join us," Hayes said simply. "Not as subjects, not as servants, as partners. We will protect you from those who would harm you, and in exchange, we ask only for friendship." The Kovani representative, an elderly being with gentle eyes, looked at Hayes with wonder. "You would protect us? Why?" Hayes thought about the question for a moment. "Because we know what it feels like to be small in a universe of giants. Because we remember what it was like to look at the stars and wonder if anyone out there would show us kindness. Because we have the power to help, and we believe that power comes with responsibility." Similar offers went out to a dozen other species. One by one, they accepted. The witness requested a private audience with Hayes. They met in a quiet room overlooking the stars. "I have watched civilizations for 6,000 years, the witness said, their crystalline form shimmering with ancient light. "I have seen conquerors rise and fall. I have seen empires built on blood and cruelty. I have seen the strong crush the weak countless times." Hayes listened without interrupting. "But I have never seen what you are doing," the witness continued. "You have power that could make you rulers of this galaxy. You could become what the Vrikari dreamed of being. Yet you choose a different path." "We learned from our own history," Hayes replied. "Humanity has had its share of conquerors and tyrants. We know how that story ends. It always ends the same way, with suffering and ruin and the eventual fall of those who thought they were invincible. So you choose to protect instead of conquer. We choose to build instead of destroy." Hayes walked to the window. "When we first discovered we were not alone, we had to make a decision. We could try to become the biggest monster in the room, or we could try to become something better. We chose better. And what if your people change? What if future generations forget these lessons?" Hayes turned back to face the witness. "That's a fair question. Power corrupts. We know this. That's why we've built safeguards into our society. Multiple governments with different views. Civilian control of military forces. Free speech and free press to challenge those in power. We don't trust ourselves to remain good. We've created systems to keep ourselves accountable. And if those systems fail, then we will deserve whatever comes next." Hayes smiled, but it was a serious smile. "But I would rather try to build something good and fail than never try at all." The witness was silent for a long moment. Then their crystalline form shifted colors in a way that Hayes had learned meant respect. "The Tellurians have watched the galaxy for millennia without taking sides," the witness said. "We have remained neutral because we believe that no species deserved our support. You have changed my mind." Hayes bowed his head slightly. "We would be honored to have the Tellurians as friends." "Friends," the witness repeated, as if tasting an unfamiliar word. "Yes, I believe we can be friends." As the summit continued, more and more species approached the human delegation. Some came seeking protection. Others came offering trade and cooperation. A few came simply to apologize for their mockery on that first day. Amy Porter handled most of these meetings. She was patient with all of them, even those who had laughed loudest. "You laughed because you didn't know," she told one embarrassed delegate. "Now you know. What matters is what you do next." Dr. Shaw began organizing what he called the Galactic Science Initiative. Species that had hoarded technology for centuries suddenly found themselves invited to share knowledge for the common good. Claire Bennett started building a network of diplomatic contacts that would eventually span the entire galaxy. Nathan Cole trained with security forces from Avaya Furtis from Avaya Shurti, Ajira security forces from Asurgi sources from Asingen. Dozen different species, not to make them fighters, but to make them protectors. And Daniel Hayes watched it all with quiet satisfaction. They had waited 30 years for this moment. They had endured mockery and insults and threats. They had hidden their true strength, while others treated them like prey. Now the galaxy knew the truth. The humans had never been prey. They had been patient. And patience, they had learned, was the greatest strength of all. 1 year had passed since the day the Guardian ships appeared at Nexus Prime. 1 year since the galaxy learned what had been standing behind the silent humans. In that time, everything had changed. The human protectorate now included 43 different species. Some were ancient civilizations that had simply been waiting for someone strong enough to stand beside them. Others were young species, much like humanity had been, who needed protection while they found their feet among the stars. All of them had chosen to join freely, without conquest or force. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was filled once again, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where once there had been mockery and fear, now there was something that felt almost like hope. Daniel Hayes stood at the central podium. He was no longer simply an ambassador. The member species had elected him High Chancellor of the Protectorate, a role he had not sought, but had accepted because someone needed to do it. 1 year ago, he began, his voice calm and clear as always. We were mocked for our silence. We were ridiculed for our apparent weakness. Some of you in this room participated in that mockery. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the diverse crowd. Hundreds of species looked back at him. Some had once been enemies. Some had been bullies. Some had simply been afraid. We do not hold grudges, Hayes continued. We understand that in a galaxy where strength meant survival, our appearance invited contempt. You saw small creatures from a single planet, and you assumed you knew what we were. Nathan Cole stood among the security forces near the edge of the hall. His team now included beings from a dozen different worlds. They had trained together, learned from each other, and become something new. A force dedicated not to conquest, but to protection. What we ask now is simple, Hayes said. We do not demand submission. We do not require tribute. We do not expect worship. We ask only that you treat others the way you wish to be treated. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Seek understanding before conflict. Build rather than destroy. Amy Porter had been promoted to full ambassador. She now represented humanity to the reformed Reverie Council. The work was difficult. Centuries of violent culture could not be changed overnight. But the new Reverie leaders were trying. Young Vakari were growing up in a galaxy where strength meant responsibility, not domination. For the first time in their history, they were learning that there was more to power than fear. Dr. Benjamin Shaw's Galactic Science Initiative had become something remarkable. Researchers from dozens of species worked together in laboratories that floated among the stars. Diseases that had plagued whole worlds for generations were being cured. Technologies that had seemed impossible were becoming reality. Knowledge that had once been hoarded as weapons was now shared as gifts. Claire Bennett ran the Refugee Assistance Program. Every month, she helped thousands of displaced beings find new homes. Families separated by ancient wars were reunited. Communities destroyed by conquest were rebuilt. The pain of centuries was slowly, carefully being healed. After the ceremony, the witness approached Hayes. The ancient Tellurian still moved slowly, still observed everything with timeless patience, but something had changed. There was warmth in their crystalline form that had not been there a year ago. "Chancellor Hayes," the witness said, "you have accomplished something remarkable. In 1 year, you have done more to change this galaxy than most species accomplish in 1,000. Hayes shook his head. "We have not done this alone. Every species in the Protectorate has played a part. We simply provided an opportunity for others to show their best nature. You are too modest." The witness moved closer. "But I must ask a question that has troubled me since we first spoke. What prevents humanity from becoming what the Vakari were? Power corrupts. This truth is as old as the stars themselves." Hayes considered the question carefully. He had asked himself the same thing many times. "You are right to worry," he admitted. "Power does corrupt. We have seen it in our own history many times. Leaders who started with good intentions became tyrants. Nations built on noble ideals fell into cruelty. We know this danger exists. And how do you guard against it? By never trusting ourselves completely." Hayes looked out at the crowded hall, at the dozens of species who had put their faith in humanity. "We have created systems of accountability. Our military is controlled by civilians. Our leaders serve limited terms. Our people have the freedom to speak out against their government without fear. We watch ourselves as carefully as we watch others. And if those systems fail, then we will deserve whatever consequences follow." Hayes met the witness's gaze directly. "But I believe this. It is better to try and fail than to never try at all. It is better to risk corruption while reaching for good than to surrender to cynicism and do nothing." The witness was silent for a moment. Then their form shifted into colors of deep respect. "You truly believe this?" "I do. And so do the people who serve with me." Hayes gestured toward his team. Amy Porter was speaking with delegates from 3 different worlds, finding common ground between old enemies. Nathan Cole was laughing with security officers from species that would have been at war a year ago. Claire Bennett was comforting a young refugee who had lost their family to violence. Benjamin Shaw was excitedly explaining a new discovery to anyone who would listen. "We are not perfect," Hayes said. "Humanity has made terrible mistakes. We have caused suffering and destruction. We carry that history with us always, as a reminder of what we must never become again." The witness nodded slowly. "This is wisdom. It is experience. Hard, painful experience. We learned our lessons in blood and tears. Now we try to spare others from learning the same way." Outside the Great Hall, a guardian ship passed silently through the stars. Its massive form was a reminder of the power humanity wielded. But its weapons were cold, its purpose protective rather than aggressive. It watched over the gathered species like a shepherd watching over a flock. Amy Porter found Hayes later that evening, standing alone on an observation deck. "Big day," she said, joining him at the window. "Yes." Hayes watched the stars. Each point of light might be a sun with worlds around it. Each world might have beings hoping for peace, fearing war, dreaming of something better. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Amy asked. Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Every day. Every single day I wonder if we're making mistakes. If we're causing harm we don't see. If we're becoming something we promised we would never be. And I keep going anyway. Because the alternative is to do nothing. The alternative is to watch the galaxy tear itself apart while we hide behind our ships and pretend it's not our problem." Amy nodded. She understood. They all understood. Every member of the human delegation had faced this question at some point. Every one of them had decided that the risk of doing good was worth taking. "They mocked us," she said softly. "They called us weak and pathetic and worthless. Yes. Now they stand with us." Hayes smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Yes, they do." The stars continued to shine, countless and ancient. The galaxy continued to turn, full of wonders and dangers and possibilities. And humanity continued to do what humanity had always done best. They survived. They adapted. They grew dot, and when they finally had the power to become conquerors, they chose to become protectors instead. Silent humans had shown the galaxy that true strength was not about destroying enemies. True strength was about making enemies into friends, and that was a lesson the universe would never forget.